Hello everybody and welcome to the first video in our series of videos on ancient Rome. The history of ancient Rome, it goes from 750 BCE all the way up to 476 CE. That's over 1200 years of history. Over the next few videos I hope to show you some of the most interesting parts of this rich history and also what life might have been like in Rome. As always, we begin a video with our learning outcomes. So by the end of this video, I hope you guys will know what a patrician is. I hope you guys will then know where a patrician lived and two of the rooms in their house. And finally, I would like you guys to know what patricians wore and what their main meal was called. So where do we begin? Well, the best place obviously to start is at the beginning. So first of all, let's see where Rome is. As you see here, it is in the middle of Italy, in the Mediterranean Sea. It's believed that the story of Rome began when villages grew up around these 7 hills that are marked on this map here, along the bank of the river Tiber. That river still runs through Rome today. The story of how the city was founded is passed down to us as a myth. It is the story of the twin brothers Romulus and Remus. They were abandoned at birth as the king saw them as a threat to his power if they were to grow up. However, they were rescued and raised by a she-wolf and eventually came back and killed the king who had ordered their murders as babies. They went to find their own city, and this city was to become Rome. Romulus picked the Palatine Hill here, as you can see, to build a city on. He argued with his twin brother Remus about what was the best place to build a city, and Remus was killed in the ensuing struggle. Romulus then became the first king of Rome, and after him there were 6 more kings until the last king, Tarquin, was overthrown for being corrupt. So while all of this is myth, it is the story that Romans of later generations grew up believing. So it is significant in that respect. Once the kings were overthrown, Rome set up a republic. So a republic is a type of government where the power is held by the people. They elect or they vote for politicians to represent a government. We in this country, in Ireland, live in a republic. We elect our representatives. However, at the beginning in Rome, only a group of people called the Patricians were allowed to vote. To be a patrician, you had to be descended from one of the 100 men that had served as the very first politicians or senators that Romulus had chosen when he became the first king. These people were very rich. So, what was life like as a patrician? They lived in houses in the cities called a domus. They would also sometimes have a house in the countryside called a villa, which would have a farm. They would have a manager who ran the farm for them, and they had slaves who worked on it. Some of these slaves would be people who were in debt, who became slaves to pay off that debt, while others may have been captured in one of the many wars that the Romans fought. The domus, or the city house of the patrician, would have been laid out similar enough to this. It had an entrance called a vestibulum, which led to a large central hall called an atrium, which all the other rooms were accessible from. The atrium would have contained a Lararium, or a household shrine, where offerings were left for the household gods, the Lares. It also contained bedrooms, which were called cubiculas. They had a kitchen, which was known as a colonna. They had a living room or office known as a tablinum. Okay, so you can see the list of the main rooms there. The outside of the house, the walls around it looked plain, or sometimes they contained small shops that were known as Tabernae, as you can see from the picture here. The dress of the patricians, it was quite simple. Everybody, whether you were rich or poor, wore a short-sleeved, knee-length tunic, which was tied at the waist, as you can see here from our first picture on the left-hand side. If you were a wealthy Roman man, you would wear a toga over the tunic, as you can see from the man in the middle there. And if you were a wealthy Roman woman, you wore a stola, or a long tunic, over your knee-length tunic. Patricians usually had about 2 meals during the day. These were simple enough meals, and they had their main meal in the evening called the Cena. No, not that Cena. They had slaves that served them food, and sometimes they actually end up overeating, and they would deliberately get sick in a special room called the vomitorium so that they could eat some more. So that brings us to the end of our first presentation on ancient Rome. So by now you should know what a patrician was. It was a wealthy Roman who was said to be descended from the original 100 senators. You should know where a patrician lived, in a domus or a villa in the countryside, and some of the rooms that were mentioned above. And finally, you should know what patricians wore and what their main meal was. So that they had a tunic, men wore a toga, women wore a stola, and their main meal today was called a cena. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys got something good from this video.